Hey guys, it is me, the dude who talks, and welcome to today's video. So for today, I'm gonna do a video that's quite different and quite a bit experimental if you think about it. And it's something that I've been thinking about a lot over the past few weeks. And that is kind of like the alternative lifestyle. Now, you notice that I did that, and I just wanted to make it more broader sense of the word alternative. And I wanted to talk about that lifestyle when I was a kid, when I was just starting out, and when I transitioned to an adult. And I thought it was important to talk about like the differences of both, like the positives and negatives, and what bands I was listening to, and kind of what advice that I wish I had listened to, and also what takeaways and what advice I could possibly give to you guys. So yeah, let's get into it. Best way to start this off was when I was growing up, and I grew up when nu metal was pretty much at its peak. Kerrang was at the top of its game, MTV2 was a thing, and it wasn't MTV Rocks as it is now. I'm not sure what it is called now though. And yeah, so I really wasn't well versed in this at first, because I remember going to my friend's house and he put Korn on and I thought it was depressing. And I was like, yeah, I wasn't really initiated, but my friends were. So at school, they were all like talking about Korn, Soulfly and all those bands. And I kind of just wanted to fit in. So the only way I did this was slowly, and this was probably at the expense of some ridicule from my friends, because my first album was, by memory, Blink-182, Take Off Your Pants and Jacket. And a huge tangent about that, because I remember buying it and being like really petrified at HMV because it had parental advisory, explicit lyrics, and I remember handing it to him and he was like, "You right, mate?" And I just looked away and just went, looked all sheepish, but yeah, no problems there. So, and then I got infested by Papa Roach for my birthday, so I was slowly getting there. All that was left was the dress sense. And I had a fondness for shirts, but I wanted to be like my friends, so I kept like asking them like, where do you get your t-shirts and hoodies from? And they were like, Harry, don't be like us, just wear your shirts, be yourself. Which is actually quite good advice, but you know me, I wanted to be a Mosher, which I will explain about later on. And the thing was, they mentioned Affleck's Palace in Manchester, which if anyone who lives up north will know about that place. And I kept getting told that you shouldn't go there, you'll get laughed if you don't have the right hoodie or something like that. And it seems absolutely silly now, so I didn't go there for quite a while, and I bought my first t-shirt in HMV in Bolton. Rest in peace, which was a Papa Roach t-shirt with a nurse on it, and I thought it was a really cool t-shirt, and you know, I liked Papa Roach at the time. So yeah, I'm just going to explain what a Mosher is for people who don't know what that is, what the term is. It's someone who wears baggy pants like Jinkos, who would sometimes wear a chain on said baggy pants. A little bit of advice on that: don't sit down on a bench with a chain on, because it'll get stuck between the cracks of the bench and it's very embarrassing. Also, a hoodie with a band on it, and either long or spiky hair, you know, like kind of Rob Flynn from the video From This Day. So at this point, I was getting into more music, like bands like Korn, Slipknot, Spineshank. I know, it was back then. Also, System of a Down, a bit of Fear Factory, and Marilyn Manson. So that was my introduction to it, and being poor meant that I couldn't exactly go out and buy these CDs. Luckily, I had a friend who had a lot of albums like that, and I would just borrow his and copy them. Failing that, if you didn't have access to like something that would copy albums for you, there was a dude up in Affleck's Palace who would sell copied CDs, which I think was highly illegal, and I wondered how he got away with it. And sometimes now I wonder what did happen to him. So yeah, I was getting well versed into being a Mosher and enjoying like that kind of alternative lifestyle. And for the most part, I look back at it with like some rose-tinted glasses. Lots of good memories with my mates, like just chilling out, watching music videos, causing general mischief outside, and also going to gigs. However, and this is onto the next part, the bad. And this is from other people who didn't understand our lifestyle. So these were the people that we would call chavs. That stands for council housed, aggressive and violent. And these people would sometimes wear like tracksuit bottoms, sporty t-shirts, like Adidas, Nike. Now, to be fair, it isn't all people who wear that kind of stuff are chavs. And looking back at it, it was kind of a bit silly to just describe everyone like that as a chav, because not all of them are. So yeah. Anyway, the ones that did would call us Mosher, or goth, or smelly goths, or want a mosh goth, which I imagine is someone who wears a hoodie or some gothic pants. So yeah, I would normally ignore these, or if I was in a bad mood, I would say, wow, that's really original, mate. Now, it wasn't just name calling. Sometimes we would get spat on by these people, or some people got outright assaulted. Luckily, that didn't happen to me. Though, to make this a little bit funnier, I'm going to tell you a funny story at my expense. So, I'll take you back to Bolton. At the Town Hall steps is where we would hang out. And there was like a whole number of them. We were in a group as well, and they were just like shouting stuff at us. One of them threw something at me, and it was like this bag, and they said, oh yeah, pick it up and shake it. And I was like, okay. And my friends were like, Harry, don't do it, don't do it. So yeah, me being an idiot, picked it up, shook it, and yeah, the fucking thing blew up in my hand. It didn't hurt that much, but you know, the pride hurt as well. And those were the kind of things where you had to say to yourself, you've got to laugh it off, otherwise you'll just become a sad sack. Though, to be fair, as I said, it wasn't all people like that. This like adult came up to us once, and I was sat down on the steps being all moody, and they're like, I'm not having a go, mate, but why do you dress like that? And I was like, because I want to. And then my mate chimed in and said, well, look, it's just different tastes, isn't it? And he was like, all right, mate, all right. Yeah, family. Now, I had a fair bit of disapproval from some of my family, not all of them, luckily. And yeah, some of them took issue with what I was wearing, like my brother did. He used to taunt me quite regularly, especially when this was a moment I was watching the music video for Split by Chimera on Kerrang TV, or it might have been Scuzz. He didn't really like what I was listening to, and he was making a load of comments about them, saying that they were all like long-haired wasters, and I was going to be like that. And I was like, so? And there was another instance where he would check my wrist to see if I was cutting myself, because apparently I was depressed and I was listening to depressive music. And he said to my dad that he'd prefer me to listen to POD because they were safer and because they were Christian. So, yeah. Though, to make this a little bit of a lighter story, I found him listening to Fall Out Boy, and the music that he used to take the piss out of me for, I was absolutely merciless with him. So yeah, there's always a silver lining. Though, yeah, I didn't really have it that bad. Like, I've heard a lot of horror stories with some families, like, being absolutely disrespectful to their kids for the lifestyles that they have. And I think it might just be like they just didn't understand the lifestyle. But, so yeah. So I've mentioned about chavs and family members, but for me, that wasn't the worst of it. And the worst of it, in my opinion, was other like-minded folk who would call people a wannabe for liking bands like Sum 41 or Limp Bizkit, and they would be subject to ridicule and also getting judged as well because those bands weren't cool. Now, I didn't have it as bad, but I know I definitely got it. And I was sometimes called lame for like misinterpreting song lyrics, or, you know, like in certain bands. Like I had a Limp Bizkit hoodie as well, so yeah. And I even asked my friend, like, do you think I'm a wannabe? And he was like, face it, Harry, you're not as bad as some of the others out there. And I was like, gee, thanks. Now, there was also like little kids who would wear Slipknot hoodies and stuff like that, and people would call them grebs as well, which is not a nice word. And looking back at it, I just want to say that I wasn't completely innocent, because I know I've called a lot of people wannabes as well. And looking back at it, I was a total cunt. So yeah, it's not cool in the slightest. So yeah, I hold my hands up to that as well. Okay, so I wasn't a mosher all the time. New metal was dying and my friends were moving on to other pastures. So I kind of stopped listening to new metal a bit, and my friends were like listening to more like emo, post-hardcore, like for example bands like Fries, Thursday, and stuff like Weed and Cambria. So yeah, new metal was dying. Kerrang, Scuzz, and MTV2 were like showing like more music videos tailored to that genre. So as the aforementioned like Fries, Weed and Cambria, 100 Reasons, who remembers them? So yeah, that kind of lifestyle was on the rise, and yes, my music taste was changing in that. And this was also when MySpace was just about to really take off. So at this point, I was going to a load of gigs. A few highlights was watching bands like The Holiday Plan. Now, I would really be impressed if you can remember who they were. Biffy Clyro before they blew up. I saw them play at Manchester Academy Free, like the really small one. And hell, they even supported 100 Reasons. Also Weed and Cambria. And a certain band called My Chemical Romance before they took off. So yeah, when I wasn't at a gig, I was going on the internet on sites like Face Party. Yep, I'm really showing my age. And as I mentioned earlier, this was before all like social messaging and like social media sites really took off. And I also got to mention MySpace again, because that was just about to start as well. And that was a huge game changer for like the scene then. So when I wasn't on the internet, I was at Urbis, and yeah, and that was when I discovered alcohol, and I would spend quite a few Saturdays and Sundays there just getting pissed. So yeah, good times, but as you all well know, there's always a downside to it. So this is going to get a little bit personal, and right off the bat, my anxiety did get the better of me a lot of times, especially when growing up, because I found it really hard to fit in with people. I felt like I wasn't cool enough. And yeah, it was so much harder for me to make friends at this point. I just found it just really difficult, because I thought it was lame. I thought it was like really uncool. And I think this was the point where I started to do more stuff for attention, like drink more and all that kind of stuff, so people would like me. Yeah. So there was a fair bit of infighting from like metalheads who would liberally throw homophobic slurs like emo fag, a word I absolutely detest. But to be fair, it wasn't just from metalheads, it was like from other emos and scene kids who would just be dicky to anyone who wasn't on their wavelength. It was just horrible, really. And not to forget, MySpace. Looking back at that, I think it was a really toxic place. A lot of scene kids who would just be rude and obnoxious, and if you tried talking to them, they would just like be horrible to you. Also, there was like the kind of war of bulletins. Like, if you don't remember, it was like if you were feeling like attention seeking, you would just like post something on a bulletin, or if you wanted to talk about your favourite band or whatever. But this was used in such a negative way, like they would just like dump on anyone who liked bands like My Chemical Romance, or if you didn't like bands like Penknife Love Life. Ugh. So yeah, there was a lot of negativity on there, and eventually I moved away. and I deleted my MySpace profile, and this was when I learned to stop following trends. It was the hardest part for me to do because I didn't know exactly where to start for this, so yeah. A number of phases music-wise. I was discovering more music and appreciating it more, especially discovering more weirder, more stranger bands that really fascinated me. For example, Godspeed You Black Emperor. A little bit of a tangent here. Don't ever mention on a date that Godspeed You Black Emperor changed you as a person, because you will be labelled a hipster douche. And rightfully so. So yeah, at this point, after having my fun with more experimental bands, I was reintroducing myself back into metal, and I was also getting a fondness for all things sludgy and doomy. I was definitely really happy at this point. I didn't feel like I was part of a trend, I was just enjoying music, and I just dressed the way I did, because, you know, I was a fully grown man. Although, to be fair, I did have more band t-shirts than I did back in the day, but that was due to having a job and being able to afford such things. And with that, I could frequent more gigs, and you know full well how I feel about that, and also collecting music and, more importantly, vinyl. So yeah, there was that. On the gigs wise, I was like, obviously discovered that I can also afford my own drinks, having a job and all, and that made everything more fun. And a more grown-up perspective of gigs was that I learned to appreciate support acts a bit better, because back in the day I was kind of a bit of a dick and heckled quite a few of them, and I wasn't really proud of that. So yeah, it was good to know that I grew up a fair bit. And I also noticed there was less infighting, especially at metal gigs. Like, quite a few people would just come up to me and go, "Oh, nice shirt, mate." And I was like, "Oh, thanks." So yeah, while there was like quite a fair bit of good stuff of being an adult, it did have its bad points, so let's get into that. So, in my adult life, I was never called a mosher, thankfully, like I was back in the day. But some of the bad stuff was like in the workplace. So yeah, I had a lot of long hair and a beard, and I was subjected to some like thinly veiled comments about my appearance, like that were meant to be a joke, but you know, they just came across as low-key bullying. Someone actually asked once, like, if I got mistaken for a girl because of my hair, which I kind of like. On the odd occasion when I got a haircut, I'd be subjected to comments like, "Oh, don't you look a bit better now that you've got your hair cut and you've had a bit of a shave? You look a bit more smart." And I was just like, fuck off. Also, about the music that I listen to as well. I barely mention to anyone what music I listen to, because I actually had this said to me, "How can you listen to that music? All they do is scream." And I was just like, fuck off. No, they don't. And also, this was when I got sent to the manager as well, because apparently I was taking cannabis and I looked stoned because of the way I am. Alright, so last example of the workplace. Lamb of God and Megadeth were in town. This was like a few years back, and I was meant to be going but ended up not going. There were a couple of colleagues of mine were going, and I just remember half the office were just like asking really ridiculous questions like, "Oh, are you going to be wearing face paint, or are you going to be sacrificing a goat and worshipping the devil," and all that lot. And it just felt like fucking secondary school. Though, to be fair, those aren't too bad, and I learnt just to like kind of take things like that with a pinch of salt. Though on the flip side, you do get like genuine questions like, "Do you play an instrument, or are you in a band?" Which I'm always happy to answer, really. And another one that I've had a couple of occasions of was like, well, more of a statement really. When I've mentioned like what kind of music I'm listening to when I got closer to someone, I always get like this statement like, "Oh, rock is dying, it's dead." And I'm like, no, it's not. But I think to explain that will be in another video. So luckily, I never really experienced much gatekeeping to my face, but online, that's a different story. Though I've had instances where I was wearing a t-shirt and I was quizzed on it I've also, when I mentioned like some bands that I liked, I'd get like, oh, I didn't think you'd be liking those kind of bands with your age. And I was like, oh, didn't realise that was a thing. Also, one occasion when I was like dancing to Love Will Tear Us Apart by Joy Division, I had someone come up to me at the nightclub and go, how old are you? And I was like, and I said something like about, oh, I'm 20. And she was like, oh. And I was like, am I not allowed to listen to Joy Division at this age? After a lot of reflecting, I thought of some advice that I would give to myself and some things to take away, and hopefully some things that you guys might learn. And the first one being is, don't worry if you don't fit in. And if you feel like you're not fitting in and nothing's working out, just try and be your own trend. Or failing that, just be yourself. Next one, this was some advice that was given to me at school when I was starting to dress the way that I did. And I asked, do you ever worry that you get called by some of the other school kids? And he just went, well, Harry, this is the thing, just don't care. And I literally thought that was some of the best advice ever. Also, next is, don't knock people for their music tastes. You'll come across like an absolute douche, and that is a lesson that I've definitely learned. Also, talking about live music and gigs, seated gigs aren't for losers, and you don't have to be right at the front for gigs to really enjoy it. And this is one that really hits home for me, and that is, sometimes life gets in the way, and the friends that you have that listened to the music when you were growing up, sometimes they're not going to follow that forever, and life gets in the way, and they're going to move on, and they might not have time for you, and that is okay. And also, music isn't the be or end all, but it does come pretty close. Alright, so that was me talking about my young life and adult life. For me, this felt like something like the punk rock MBA would do. So, Finn, if you're watching, I'm a big fan of your videos. Though seriously, this was a bit of an experiment, so I appreciate you watching this. I'm really interested to know what your experiences were being younger or an adult, listening to music or dressing the way that you do. So please let me know what it was like for you down below in the comments section. Like always, if you've enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe. It really helps out. And don't you worry, I will be back to reviewing music next week. So yeah, all I've got left to say to you guys is I've been the dude who talks. You guys are fucking awesome. Thank you so much for listening. Cheers.